this is a workshop Mary Pearl usually does in 8 hours, so we're going to cram it into 2. So I'm not going to take any more time. This is Mary Pearl T. from North Little Rock, Arkansas. Thank you.
Aloha. Like she said, this is going to be an interesting, hello, thank you. This is going to be an interesting little workshop since I've never tried to condense it down into this. So either you're going to have to listen really fast, I'm going to talk really fast, you're going to have to just do whatever you have to do. I want to tell you how it came about, the traditions in relationships. One night in my home group, there were 9 of us who were all living in sobriety with sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we all wanted a divorce. And so we asked one of the members of our group, who was an attorney, could we get a group rate on a divorce? Since there were 9 of us, it seemed to me that, we ought to be able to get a discount. And she said no, that first of all, she wouldn't handle one for all of us, and that secondly, that it would be individual. And so then it affected my frugality. And so I said, well, damn. I may have to stay in this relationship then if I can't get a cheap divorce. And so we went on and we thought about that, and I began to pray about it because I said, this doesn't make sense that if someone is in Alcoholics Anonymous and they're working their 12 steps, and I'm in Al-Anon and I'm working my 12 steps, how come we can't get along together? What is the deal there? Why won't that work? And I got to thinking about that, and I said, the traditions hold groups of sickies together so they can function, and God knows we were sickies, so why couldn't we apply the principle from the 12 steps of the 12 traditions to our relationship? And so that was how the idea, and then over the next year of praying about it and doing a lot of writing, this is what I came up with. And they gave you a little sheet. As you see, I have reworded the traditions to make them apply to relationships. This is in no way conference approved. Nothing I'm saying is conference approved. This is straight from the book of Mary Pearl. So take what you want and cheerfully throw it away if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Okay, tradition 1. Our common welfare comes first. A healthy relationship depends upon unity. Now, unity must start within me, because I've learned in the program I can't transmit something I don't have. So if I'm going to bring unity to a relationship, and the thing about it is, a lot of us go into relationships to what we can get out of a relationship. And see, that was one of the first changes of attitude, because life is a potluck. What are you bringing? If you're not bringing anything to the relationship except your sickness, that's what you're going to have. And if all you're bringing is all your experience in doing your defects, that's all you're going to have. You got to have something different to bring. And so I had to bring unity, and unity within myself comes from my relationship with my higher power. My higher power gets all the Mary Pearls together, gets us all together under one little thing here where we can learn how to be happy, joyous, and free. And I do that by my reading, my prayer, and my meditation. I call it my RPMs. Those are the things that rev me up in the morning. Those are the things that get me started off on a good day. Those are the kind of things that I need to energize me. And the energy that I need is positive energy, which comes from a higher power. See, I'm an adrenaline junkie, so I'll take energy from any place I get it. So it's very important, excuse me, that I start out with positive energy. Can't even talk. One of the most important things that I'm going to have unity in my relationship is I'm going to have to learn acceptance. I'm going to have to accept that other person, place, thing, situation exactly as it is, and function anyway, and function maybe happily even. And I don't know about y'all, but I have a hard time with acceptance. I have a tendency to want things the way I want them, when I want them, how I want them. And if they don't do that, I sort of get out of whack sometimes. Well, I want to tell you a story that happened to me several years ago, which brought down the fact that I still need to work on acceptance all the time. That's one of those things I will constantly be working on. My husband, J.D. By the way, I'd like for you to meet J.D. He's the original survivor. J.D.? They think they have it bad on the show. Anyway, JD is quite a gardener, and we have a beautiful yard, an absolutely beautiful yard. It should be, you know, he manicures it. And so I got to thinking about that one day, and see, that's always dangerous for an Al-Anon when we start thinking. And I thought, you know, I need me a flower bed, and I need to have something where I can personalize the yard and put my name on that, since he's got all of the rest of the yard. So I decided I would take the front flower bed and I would enlarge it a little bit. And so overnight I decided it needed to be 50 foot long and 15 foot deep, you know, just a little flower bed. And I went out there and I made me this little free-form template, and I decided that I didn't want a distinct edge. I wanted this little wavy line. And I made this little template, and I went to the quarry. And I gathered all these rocks at the quarry, and I'm getting them one by one, and I'm laying them on my template. And the guy at the quarry said, "I've never seen anything quite like that." And I said, "But you see, I've got to have the rocks, and they've got to all be the same size and pretty much the same shape for this to be, because, see, it's got to be perfect. You understand that?" And so I'm there all day long in the hot boiling sun at the quarry. I'm getting my rocks, you know. So I get all my rocks together and pay for them, and I go home and I lay them all out, and this is my flower bed line. And so across the back next to our brick home, I planted all of these elephant ears because I like the greenery. You know, y'all have the greenery of the world here, you know. And so I'm liking those big elephant ears. And then across the front, I put hostas, and I had a variegated, a solid, all the way across. Now, between the elephant ears and the hostas, I put 17 flats of impatiens. That's a lot of little holes and a lot of little flowers. It took a long time to get all those out there. And so now at home we have a product called Miracle Grow. I don't even know if y'all need that here. But anyway, there's a guy on the TV there, and he says, "I got a 50-pound tomato here. Got it using Miracle Grow." I said, "By God, that's what I need, some Miracle Grow." So I went and I bought some Miracle Grow. On the bag it says if you use it, put it through your water hose, and if you water once a month, you know, this will fertilize whatever. Well, we all know if once a month is good, then once a week must be better, mustn't it? You know, because my philosophy of life, if it's worth doing, do it till you die on the spot. And there's never too much of a good thing. So, there I am, and I'm out there watering, and it just seemed like in a matter of weeks, you know, I have 4-foot-tall impatiens. They're absolutely fantastic. I've got blooms the size of my hand, you know, and people are coming by, and the newspaper's out, and they're taking pictures, and I'm there. I'm waiting to do my Miracle Grow endorsement, you know. I mean, is this not absolute? It's just, it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And then a hole appeared in my flower bed. It was a massive hole. It was huge, and my little impatiens are very tender plants, and these were broken off even with the ground. Now, when you replant plants, and you've already got plants, these are never going to be the same height. This is screwed up. Do you understand that? It is screwed up for all time. This is screwed up. Now, what happened here? What happened? Something is the matter. What happened? And so JD told me one day, he says, "I think I found the problem." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Come out here." And there is a cat in the middle of my flower bed. It is a big calico cat, of dark color with all the little patches of color. And she's stalking my bird feeders and my squirrels from my jungle I have created with my giant plants over here. And so she's in there breaking them down, lurking. And I said, "My God in heaven, it's a cat." Well, see, I hate cats right off the bat. Don't like cats. I'm a dog person. When I was a little kid, my sister Siamese jumped on me. I had to have 18 stitches taken. I don't like cats. And so now I have added insult to injury. It's a damn cat that has ruined my perfection in my flower bed, you know. It has to go. Now you go to your meeting, and before the meeting, you know, that's the only time we're allowed to discuss problems is before the meeting. During the meeting, we discuss recovery. And my problem was, how do you get rid of this darn cat? And so everybody there had a different solution. That's what I love about an Al-Anon meeting, you know. Everybody knows how to fix it. Everybody has their own little personal brand of solution. And so in the process, you know, here we are. They told me, they said, "Well, put mothballs. Cats can't stand the smell of mothballs." Well, my cat can. Because I put enough mothballs, you could smell our house from 3 blocks away. And the cat still came back. And then they said, well, take cayenne pepper. I went to Sam's and I got a gallon of the cracked cayenne pepper and I put it all out in my flower bed. I got a Mexican cat, obviously, because it loved it didn't bother it. And so I went through about 8 or 10 other things, and then finally it was the end of the year, and so we went through the winter, and come spring I replant my impatiens, and I get my miracle grow, and here we go again. And as they got big, guess what happened? The hole came back because the cat came back, And I am really irritated, and I had this girlfriend in Oregon, and she said, well, what you need is these little cheap plastic forks. They're real picky on the end, and if you put them in handle first, then the little points are up and the cat can't walk in your flower bed. Well, you can't either because you got to weed those flowers, and so that doesn't work very well, And so finally my solution came, and I had used, I had the summer before, I took a pellet gun. I have a rifle, pump-up pellet gun. And so I would pump it up to like 3, and when the cat would be out in the yard, I would take and beat in on her and I'd shoot her. And she would go, "Air!" but she would come back. She's doing the same thing. You expect something different. It got to the point every time I went out the door with my gun, well, the cat was like this, we were both, stalking each other out in the front. And so now I've decided it's gotten serious. This is the 2nd year for the cat, and I'm tired of the cat. The cat must die. And so I have a 45, and I'm gonna just take out the cat because, I've had it with the cat. And I was talking to a friend of mine, he raises golden retrievers, and he was talking about that he shot and killed the next door neighbor's little stray dog, and he said, I didn't kill it on the first shot. And he says, I'll never forget that scream as long as I live. I said, well, thank you so much for sharing that, Skip. So now the thought is, what if I don't kill the cat on the first shot? I don't want the cat out there screaming and flinging about. I don't want that. And so it's like, what am I going to do? And then finally it occurs to me, you're trying to change the nature of a cat. A cat's a predator. That's what they do. They stalk their prey. And this is a feral cat. And so she was just out there doing her deal, She was doing what a cat in her situation does, and I'm doing what a nut in my situation does. Now, who's going to have to change? Who's going to have to change? I'm going to have to accept the fact the cat's going to be a cat. Is that amazing? And the thing about it is, I've been explaining this to my sponsor now for over 1.5 years, and she's just laughing hysterically. And she's saying, it's going to hit you one of these days. I hate it when they make you figure it out, And so finally I told JD, I said, that's what it is. I'm trying to change a cat. I've got to accept the cat the way the cat is. I don't like it. But that's one of the things I've learned in here. You don't have to like something to accept it. You don't have to want to accept it. You just, by God, do it. And so I've always been an overachiever, so I go out in my front yard and I yell, welcome to my yard, FC. Eat the birds, eat the cats, eat the squirrels, do whatever you want to do out here. Welcome, you'll be my yard cat. And I came back in the house and he's dying laughing, and I said, watch it, don't laugh. And the next morning I'm doing my reading, my prayer, my meditation, and I'm standing there and I'm looking out my front window. And I have a little Japanese bonsai tree out there. And one of my happy squirrels is gnawing a limb off my bonsai tree. And so I go running out in my front yard and I'm screaming, where the hell is my cat? Where is my cat? Eat this squirrel. The squirrel is the offender today. Where is my cat? I've never seen that cat again. You accept it and then it goes away. Is that not the funniest, But then there's this guy driving past and he's looking sort of alarmed, and I'm thinking, what is the matter with you? And then I realized I'm out here in my underwear. I had become so overcome with the situation out in my yard, I'd forgotten that I hadn't dressed yet for the day. Now see, that's what happens to me when I'm trying to do something that I don't know what I'm doing. But it tells me that I need to accept things as they are. And so, believe it or not, last fall, guess what? FC2 appeared. This is another feral cat. This one is a white cat that's all calico and everything. She sort of looked at me and went, and I looked at her and went, And we're coexisting. I'm not bothering her. She's not bothering me. She's doing what she does. She's out there killing the birds and squirrels, and she's doing what cats do. But I'm not planting impatience either. I'm not doing the things that I was doing that was contributing to the problem. That's the only thing I can do. And so to me, I have to have that willingness to do something different. I have to accept. I have to learn to be honest. I have to learn to communicate, and I have to have an open mind. And you see, it took me a long time to even get there regarding a cat, much less somebody in my life, a relationship. Tradition 2. For our family or relationship purpose, there's but one authority, a loving God, as He expresses Himself in our informed family conscience. Each partner is God's trusted servant, neither governors. I've always been a dominating type individual. Managers and controllers usually are, And there's a reason. Have you ever realized that the person who's the biggest manager and controller is the most fearful person? Because when you are terrified, that's when you have to get all your ducks in a row all the time for you to feel comfortable. If you're not scared to death about stuff, you can just allow life to happen. You don't have a need to manage and control. You can pretty much go with the flow. The only problem with when you're controlling like that is there's a tremendous amount of responsibility that comes with that. Because, see, when you're in control and if something goes wrong, guess who's responsible? And usually the people in my life would let me know. Well, in this tradition, God is the one that's in charge. Not me, not JD, not someone else. God is in charge. And so if it says that your informed family conscience is what governs here, Well, that to me is when all the information everybody has comes to the table. And how many times do you find in your family or relationship that somebody knows something but never said? And then afterwards you'll hear, well, I never thought that would work. Well, why didn't you think that would work? And then they'll give you the information they had that you didn't have when you were getting ready to make that decision. And so that informed family competence is when everybody comes together and everybody gives everybody all the information they have. And then, what if you can't reach a decision? Well, this is where God comes in. We will say, well, we'll table this. We'll go back and we'll pray about it. We'll come back and talk about it again. And it's amazing sometimes when you come back together to discuss that, to make that decision, something new has come up that nobody realized before, or you find you can negotiate, you can give here, they can give there. And the bottom line, say the worst thing happens and the decision appears to be horrible. It went terribly, terribly wrong. It may not be wrong, because that's one of the things I've learned in the program is that we don't know the difference between good and bad. Sometimes good things happen to us, we think, and then later we realize that that was not a good thing because we were not able to deal with that maturely. Or something happens and we think it's very, very bad, and later it turns out those are the things that make us change to where we grow and we live better. So do we ever really know? But when it goes wrong, when you've done it this way, you can't blame one another. There's nobody to blame except God. He could care less. That's one thing about God. He doesn't really care if you blame Him about stuff. And I found out that another thing that's real important when you're trying to reach a decision is timing. Say you have an idea or something and you've been thinking about it all day and they walk through the door. The minute they walk through the door is not necessarily the time to pounce on them with this brilliant idea. It's like let them have time to get in, get settled, and then say, there's something I would like to discuss. Are you in the mood to discuss something? Run it past them, because they may have had a crummy day, and on a crummy day, I don't care how good your idea. I've had a crummy day. I don't even want to hear it. That kind of thing. And I know other people feel the same way. And so my thing is this, too. My mother used to really irritate me as a child. And I would say, can I go down to so-and-so's? And she'd say, well, let me think about it. And I'll say, what is there to think about? I'm just going down there, for God's sake. And she'd say, well, you want an answer right now? And I said, yes. She said, no. I said, no, you can think about it. And that's the thing. If you're being pressured in, trying to make an answer or a decision based on nothing but the moment or how you feel, I would say the answer's no. Give me time to think about it, especially in major decisions. See, JD and I could not get together on any kind of decision. The way we used to do stuff is like he wanted a sports car, I wanted a station wagon. Well, there's a lot of difference between a sports car, little bitty, and the great big station wagon. So we went down to buy the new vehicle. What did we get? We got a truck. Why did we get a truck? Nobody wanted the truck. He didn't want a truck, I didn't want a truck, but I wouldn't give in and he wouldn't give in, and so we got a truck because then that way we could both be equally as miserable. Now maybe you don't make decisions like that, but that was the way we used to make decisions. And I know today that I have another theory, and it's called bless it or block it. When I have something, I ask God to bless this decision or block it. Put something in the way that will show me what a closed door is, and God help me to recognize a closed door before my forehead is flat. You know, it's sort of like that commercial with the Windex and the birds, you know, where they pull the door through and the guy whams against the glass, you know. I'd hate to tell you how many times I've gone through that door like that, wham, 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 because it was what I wanted to see on the other side. And it wasn't necessarily the best or what was needed. There's another thing that you need to do in this tradition, and that is practice courtesy in your home. It was always amazing to me how much nicer I could be to complete strangers than the people that were living in the house with me. You know, because you would not yell and tell somebody, shut up, can't you see I'm busy, to a complete stranger. You just wouldn't do that. And why would you do that to people you love? Because, see, you're taking the love for granted that they're going to forgive you and they're going to not take offense to that and they're not going to be hurt by that. But I can tell you, as a child growing up with a mother who yelled at me continuously every time I went to her, shut up, can't you see I'm busy, leave me alone, I can tell you that has a profound effect upon you for a long time to come. You know, those kind of things. So I wanted to use the courtesy. Tradition 3. 2 or more persons, when gathered together for mutual benefit, may call themselves a relationship. The only basic requirements for a good marriage or relationship are a mutual desire to be in that relationship and a willingness to make it work. You know, willingness. How willing are you to make your relationship work? Willingness without action is just a fantasy on your part. You know, you can say you're willing all day long, but until you put that willingness into action, it's just a fantasy. And I can tell you, one person by themselves cannot make a relationship work, no matter how hard you try. By yourself, you cannot do that deal. You can do your part, but you can't do enough for 2 people. It's just not going to work. I've tried it a lot of times. You've got to have communication. You know, what is communication? I heard a guy say one night, he says, well, it goes without saying. No, it doesn't. It does not go without saying. You might be very obvious to you, but it may not be obvious to the other person. And if you're not saying how you feel about something or what you think about something, you're not giving that person the benefit of the information. That's not communication. On the other hand, you've got to be willing to listen to what the other person is saying and listen with an open mind. Not listen with the idea of how you can hear what they're saying and then be doing your rebuttal automatically in your mind. You know how we do that too. You know, we got to know. See, that was my thing always. I wanted to know why. Tell me why. See, if I could figure out why you do what you do, then I can head you off at the pass and I can manipulate you and manage and control you much better if I know how you think and the way you think. Those kind of things. My sponsor tells me, you know, she says people who walk around in another's mind is lost. And that's true too, because you think, what's so funny to me is, are we always worried about what other people are going to think? They're not thinking about us. We're so self-centered, we think that we are all they think about. They're thinking about themselves. We're all self-centered, you know. And so it doesn't make any difference what other people think. It's what you and God know that makes it important, you know. And your partner will never know what that is if you don't share that with him. Now, there's lots of reasons to stay in a relationship. And some are healthy and some are not, you know. My first marriage, my training marriage, if you will. You know, I think everybody ought to have at least a couple, you know, just sort of to weed out stuff, you know. And I stayed in that because I felt trapped and I was confused. And you see, my mother had told me when I got married, she said, you shouldn't marry him. And if you do, you've made your bed and you lie in it, and don't you come crying back to me, you old bitch. I wouldn't if I died over here, you know. That's how I felt about it. And so therefore, when it wasn't going right, you know, I could not go back and admit to her that she had been right. You know, God forbid that your mother is ever right. And so I was trapped in that. And there was another thing. I have a tremendous amount of pride. I was unwilling to make it known, what was so obvious to everybody else but me, that I had failed at marriage. You know, we just don't want to be a failure. So just hang on till you just die, you know, just hang right in there. Hang seems to be the key word there. And the thing about it is, I noticed in the program, it's real easy when you have been married in a sick relationship for a long time, whether you're married or not, actually. And it's easier to get a new one than it is to fix an old one. You know, because it's a lot of work to have to go back. And you can't build a good house on burnt lumber. And so you're going to have to learn to put the past in the past and leave it there, if you're going to take the relationship you have. Of course, that, like I say, that's what we did. We were both so sick, we decided, you know, whoever dies, the other one wins, and we're going to hang in. You know, we're going to be in that deal. But I've watched people do it, but the only problem is, if you do not try to rebuild that relationship to at least where it's healthy, or at least you're healthy, you will do exactly the same thing with the next person. Something has to be different. And the something is you. You're going to have to be different, and you're going to have to do things differently. And when I got here, I didn't know how to do things any way than the way I was doing them. You know, I wasn't happy. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't doing any of the things that I should have been doing, but I was doing the best I could for where I was. If you don't have any new tools, you'll continue to use the old ones again and again and again for lack of anything different. New relationships, have you ever noticed, are just great and wonderful. Describe the new fella to somebody. Oh, God, he's handsome. He's sweet. He does this. He does that. And then you get married. You get the piece of paper. Now we change him. All of those good things, you know, and all those things that you didn't like about him, now we're going to change those things. Those were not the things you were sharing with other people. You were never telling other people that this was the things I didn't like, you know. And there's a lot of things that kill a relationship, like fear, dishonesty, obsessions, mental unfaithfulness. That's where you look at somebody else and go, I bet it would be better with them than it would be with what I've got. Now, you don't even have to act upon that, but that thought in there will make you more judgmental and critical of what you have. Denial, abuse, and then something that's my favorite is bitching. You know, JD tells me I'd bitch if I was hung with a new rope. You know, and that's probably true because, see, that was something that I grew up with, was that constant, and I hated it. I hated it, and now I turn around, and that's what I became. Isn't it funny how you become the things you hate? I was sharing with Ethel, who started the meeting a moment ago, that the very first inventory I ever did in my life was of a lady named Ethel. And she was my sponsor. She was my grand sponsor. And I couldn't stand Ethel. And I'd go to the meetings, and Ethel would do things that irritated me. And so I had a list of things at home, things I hate about Ethel, and I'd write them down on a piece of paper. And I was doing that for several weeks, and then JD said to me before I was going, I was looking at my list, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I didn't want to duplicate anything on the list, and I was just checking it off." And he says, "Well, in AA," oh, I hate it when they start out like that. He said, "They tell us there's good in everybody and there's bad in everybody." And I said, "Well, there's no good in Ethel." He said, "Have you ever looked for any?" I said, "Well, no, but there isn't any." But see, that just challenges me. And so I went to the meeting that night, and she was talking about when she gets angry, she would repot her plants, and she had almost worn the roots off of some of them, putting them in and out and killing him, poking him down in the dirt. She was just killing her husband again and again. And so I went home that night, and I turned my paper over, and I wrote, "Things I like about Ethel. Ethel likes plants." That was how it started. And then over a period of time, one night I'm looking at both sides of my list, and I have got pretty much as much on one side as I do the other. And I said, "JD, I figured it out." He said, "What?" I said, "I know why I hate Ethel." He said, "Why?" And I said, "I think we're just alike." Because, see, it's those things that we see in others that we don't like that we really hate about ourselves. And I didn't know that. There's always the thing about selfishness. You know, it's what I want. It's about me. It's more. It's mine. And then the self-centeredness. It's all about me. I am the center of the universe. And then there's self-seeking. What's in it for me? You know, those are the things that kill a relationship. But now there's things that will heal a relationship. And some of those things are humor. My God, if I couldn't laugh and if JD and I couldn't laugh, we wouldn't be here today. There's just no way. And sometimes we laugh at things that, have you ever noticed that we laugh at things that a lot of people don't think are funny? Watch a newcomer come into our meeting and somebody else say, God, you know, I felt like shooting him last night. And everybody, oh, you know. And the newcomer's just startled, you know, like, oh God, I'm in a room with crazies, you know. But that's the thing, we have gotten past that and we have learned to laugh at ourselves because we relate to that. Because who in the world has lived in alcoholism with an alcoholic who hadn't wanted to kill him at one time or another? I don't know anybody that fits that description, you know, because at me it's just easier. I have one of my grandbabies says to me, she says, your solution to things in the bottom line seems to be kill it, doesn't it? I said, pretty much. Pretty much. I said, it's sort of a final thing, you know, when you've done all you can do, well then just kill it. Another thing is sincere amends. Sincere amends, you know. I've made a lot of amends in my life and some have been sincere and some have not. But, you know, I don't believe in direct apology because I don't believe that's how I hurt people, you know. And an apology really doesn't do what my sponsor was telling me I had to do. An apology says, I'm sorry for what happened. I'm sorry. Okay. Does sorry mean anything to you? Doesn't mean a darn thing to me. I heard JD tell me he was sorry until I thought you most certainly are. You know, you're about the sorriest thing I've ever seen. But my sponsor says that I must say I was wrong for what I did. Now see, that's a whole different ball game there, to be wrong. That's like, you know, one morning I woke up and we're both in recovery and JD, when he got sober, decided that he would no longer smoke, he wouldn't drink, he wouldn't do this, he wouldn't do that, and he was going to get good. Now the program tells us we get well. We don't necessarily get good. But anyway, I was still smoking. Now, he said he quit smoking. What it is, he quit buying. So he would steal my cigarettes. Now, that irritates me. I don't know about you, but that really irritates me when I wake up in the morning and somebody had my cigarettes and I didn't have a cigarette. And so he had done that morning. And I looked at him and I said, how would you have felt if I'd have drank all your booze the night before when you were drinking and when you got up you wouldn't have had that? He said, I wouldn't have liked it. I said, I don't like it either. He said, so what are you going to do about it? I don't know, but I'm going to do something, you know. And so I was screaming and yelling and having this fit, and he just walks very calmly out and gets in the truck, and he starts driving, and I am following behind it, telling him all about it. I mean, I'm just out there, you know, don't think that you can get away that easy. You know, I will follow you down the street, down the driveway. I could fling myself on the hood of the car. I've done that before. You will not ignore me, you know. But he went on down. The phone rang. It was a girl in my group. She said, how's your day going? I said, I'm having a crappy day. She said, what is it? And I said, some bitch stole my cigarettes. That's what happened. And so she's going, what do you mean? And I said, he stole my cigarettes. She said, do you not have any money? Of course I have money. What do you mean? Well, how far away is the closest store? 3 blocks. We have a little neighborhood grocery. Then she says, why don't you go buy you some cigarettes? Because he should have to do it. He's the one who stole them. He should have to make it right. She says, but he's not going without the cigarette. Don't you hate logic like that? You know, that just didn't compute in my mind. And so I told her that, and she said, and I was telling her what I said to him and about me going out after him down the street, and she said, ooh, I hate to hear that. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, you owe him an amends. He stole my cigarettes. I owe him an amends? I don't think so. And she said, oh yeah, for your behavior. Your behavior. You don't owe him an amends for the cigarette, but you owe it for your behavior. Because she said that was so out of whack. I'm not at that step yet. And she said, Yeah, you are. She said, we try to live within the step framework now. She said, I told her, she said, that's not an amends of the past. That's an amends of the present. And that's what you get to do. And I said, I'm not going to do it. And she said, I'll call and tell your sponsor. Now see, that's the kind of people that I came in this program with. They would rat you out to your sponsor when they would see you do something. And so I thought, oh God. So I got in my car and I drove over, and he had gone to my mother's. He went to the enemy camp. And so she liked him better than she did me. You know why? He always agreed with her. That's why. And see, I always argued with her. You know, we couldn't get along. And so he was out and he was mowing her back field. And as I approached, he stopped the mower and he squared off. And because I had followed him again, you know, and I'm over there, and so I got up close to him, and I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "What?" And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "What did you say?" See, he's got a 70% hearing loss. And I said, I was wrong." He said, "What?" And I said, I was wrong." He said, "Oh my God, do you realize you've never told me you were ever wrong?" I said, "That's a lie." And you know how your mind will go so you can recall and tell them, you know, when it was, you know, searching. And then all of a sudden, not found. You know. I didn't realize until that day that whenever we had an argument, he always had to be the one to admit he was wrong. He always had to be the one to say he was sorry. He always had to do that to end the fight. If not, I would have carried it on for years. And the reason was my self-esteem was so low, I could not afford to be wrong and make mistakes. Because when I made a mistake, I felt like I was a mistake. And so therefore, I could never be wrong. And that was very revealing to me that day. I also know that prayer, good communication, respect and courtesy go a long way. Not being a taker, but being a bringer. And having a healthy spiritual condition by bringing God into the relationship will help make that relationship work for my part of the relationship. Tradition 4. Each partner should be autonomous in matters affecting the other partner, the family or relationship or society as a whole. I had never heard the word autonomy until I came into the fellowship. I don't know if you ever had. But I learned that means we have freedom. You have the freedom to do whatever you want to do, however you want to do it, whatever, as long as you're willing to be responsible for what you do. You have that kind of freedom. And so that's autonomy. So in my relationship, I'm free to do anything I want to do. My relationship does not limit me on what I can do. And I used to think that a lot of times when you got married, you know, two become as one and wherever they go. And that's not it. We're two individual people. We're going to have our differences, and those things are okay. I found that when I want to take an autonomous action on something major, I always run that past God and my sponsor. You know, and if it's something I really feel within my heart that it's okay for me to do, I go ahead and do that. Now, does that make him mad? Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. But being mad is not necessary. That's his reaction to what I've done. That was not my intent for him to be. So he's got his own program to deal with his feelings, you know. I don't go into my mind too much without my sponsor. She tells me my mind's a dangerous neighborhood. I shouldn't go in alone. Because my mind, when left to its own devices, I come up with solutions like murder, you know, like maiming people, you know, those kind of things. You may laugh, but that sometimes is my solution. I have to know who I am before I can be autonomous. Now, I am more than a daughter. I'm more than a sister. I'm more than a friend. I'm more than a person who works. I'm more than all that. I am first and foremost the same as every one of you, and that is a child of God. And when I know that I'm a child of God, because when I got here, I didn't feel like I was a child of God. I knew the things that I had done, and I had judged me very harshly, and I did not feel worthy of God's love. But thankfully, through the steps, I have been able to get past all that. Now, and I forgot to tell y'all in my haste to get started, that if you cannot work the steps, if you don't have a working relationship with the steps, you'll never be able to do the traditions. Because you're going to have to come back. The work always has to go back to you and working through the steps in order for you to comply with the principles here in the traditions. Any autonomous action can be destructive when my defects are in control. You know, I can do just little simple things, you know, like I can be walking, I've done it many times. I used to walk at the mall in the mornings, and it was not good for me to walk at the mall after the stores opened. You walk before the stores open, because I'm an impulsive person. And I can walk past the window and I can look at something and say, oh God, isn't that neat looking? And after I make a couple of rounds, I have already determined where it will go, how it's going to be, what have you. And before I leave the mall, I have to buy that. You know, and then you get it home and it doesn't do what you thought it was going to do. And so there you are. Now, I used to bitch about JD making us financially unstable with his drinking. Truth be known, when he quit drinking, that money quit going out to alcohol. But it took 10 years to pay off my little retaliation binges, going past buying, trying to make myself feel good, trying to fill a hole on the inside with something from the outside. And I did that and that was an autonomous action on my part, but it caused us a lot of problems in our relationship, you know. I made a lot of unilateral decisions too. Decisions that were going to affect both of us, I would make without even running it past him. And I think all that happens as a result of, number one, self-centeredness, but also, number two, of his not being in the relationship to the same degree all those years of the active alcoholism. You have to go ahead and live and do and manage things and keep things going. And so, I mean, why should you ask somebody who's passed out on the couch what they think about something? You really don't care what they think, you know. So you make a lot of unilateral decisions without even bringing it to them. But I also know that I don't like it when people do that to me. You know, it's like when he would come home and bring somebody with him and he'd say, I brought so-and-so home for supper. Well, good. I hope you're cooking. And JD says, well, you know I don't cook. I said, well, then how do you plan on having dinner for that other person? Because, you see, I hadn't planned my meal based around having company. Now, I'm the only one working in our house, and I'll be damned if I'm going to be the one going without supper. So now, are you giving it to the person you brought? You know, those kind of things. And then it was so funny because when he got sober, JD came in one night and he said, honey, we're having a speaker meeting on Saturday night and they want you to make brownies. Who wants me to make brownies? And he said, well, I told the AA group that you'd make brownies. And I said, well, good. I'm not making brownies. He said, what do you mean? I said, JD, there was such a thing as saying, I can check with Mary Pearl and see if she'll make brownies. But I said, no. I said, you know, I don't like my choices being taken away from me any more than you do. I don't like that. And so he said, okay. And he was waiting, and then here it is, you know, Saturday morning, and he's going, oh, where are the brownies? And I said, what brownies? He said, the ones for the meeting tonight. And I said, I don't know. I told you I wasn't making brownies. He said, you were serious about that. I said, I was serious about that. So JD left, and he came back in a little bit, and he had these 2 boxes of brownie mix. And he says, I guess I'll have to make brownies. And he's reading the directions on the back. And you know the hardest thing in the world? To let him make those brownies. Because he's in my kitchen using my utensils. You know, he's destroying my kitchen, you know. But I refused to make the brownies, so now I have to accept the fact. And you know, the thing of it was, JD added something to his little menu repertoire that he could fix besides hot dogs. Now he can make hot dogs and brownies, you know. But anyway, he got over there and he said, they loved my brownies. I said, I'm so happy for you. And I really wasn't. I was irritated that he had managed to overcome the challenge. You know, it's an honest program, you know. But he learned, don't make decisions for me. That's not something I'm going to be happy with. And I've learned, too, not to do things in order to get a reaction back from somebody. So many times you go, oh, well, if I do this, then they'll do that, and then this will happen. Well, see, you're doing something then, instead of doing it for the sake of that's what you want to do, you're trying to get a reaction back. And one of those things is, have you ever gone up when you really needed to have someone hold you and tell you they love you? Have you ever gone up to them and said, I love you. I love you. So that they'll say, I love you too. You know. And so that was one of the neat things in our house, is that we don't have to do that. You know, if he wants to say he loves me, or if I want to say I love him, I don't have to get it back for me to be okay. You know, we're not fishing for those things. I don't do those things anymore. And besides, see, I've got this weird thing about my hearing. You know, we talk about the disease of alcoholism, but have you ever noticed how people hear things differently? If you don't believe it, sponsor somebody. You'll hear them say, and my sponsor said, and you're going, I've never said that before in my life. Wonder how they heard that, you know. But I do hear things differently a lot of times, and I know JD does because of his hearing loss. So we have really had to work on our communication. Well, here a few years ago, JD decided that he wanted a water garden in our backyard. And he talked about it, but see, being alcoholic, JD talks about a lot of things that never happen. You know, he's making big plans, or he gets stuff started that never gets done. So I wasn't thinking too much about that. And I went off to Kentucky one weekend. I come back, and he never said anything had transpired while I was gone when I came in that Sunday night. And he went off and went to work the next morning, and I woke up. And I yawned, and I looked around my room, and I have 2 black poodles who are brown. I'm going, what happened? What happened there? My dogs are covered in mud. Mud. Now, where would mud come from? Well, it rained a little last night, but we don't have any mud, I thought. And then I went out to see the cause of the mud, and you see there is a huge, huge hole in our backyard. And all this dirt that came out of that backyard, you know, he watches too much movies. He saw Steve McQueen walking it off in his pants legs, you know, in that movie, where he was digging out of a prison or something. And so JD had scattered all of the dirt from this gigantic hole all over our backyard, and it had rained. And so now the dogs had no place to go but out in the mud and bring it back in. So there was mud on the couch, on the bed, everywhere. Everywhere the dogs were, there was mud. And I thought, I'll kill him. Because the hole in every picture and everything that we had books and stuff on water gardens out the kazoo talked about 18 to 24 inches. This hole was 5 foot deep. We had a swimming pool in the backyard. Because, see, he does the water garden like I did my front flower bed. You know, if it's bigger, it's better. You know, that kind of thing. And so I called my sponsor and I said, I'm going to kill him. And she said, we've been there before. And I said, I know this time I'm going for it. We're having house guests in 2 days, and my house on the inside is a river of mud. And I don't know if you've ever tried to clean up mud, but you got to wait till mud dries, and then you brush it off. You cannot do anything but smear mud when it's there. And it was all over the carpeting and everywhere. It was just everywhere. And besides that, now see, I have these 2 dogs. And they have pet doors, so they come and go as they please. That's the reason that they were so nice and muddy. They've been out there rolling and playing frantically in the mud. So now I have to lock all the pet doors. I have to bathe the dogs. I can get that much accomplished. But now my dogs always go out when they want to go. Now, how do you know when they want to go? Because they go when they want to go. So every hour on the hour, I've got them on leashes, and I'm taking them out in the front yard for a walk. And they're going, what are we doing here? Why are we out here? What is the matter with her? And I am so mad. I am crying. I am having fits. And so when JD came home, I was out in the front yard with the dogs, walking them again. And he said, what's going on? And I said, take a look inside the house, and when I get back in, have a solution. Have a solution. And so when we went back in the house, he did not have a solution, you know. He was sitting at our bar going, oh, God, oh, God. I said, God's not going to help you right now. I'm here, and I'm mad. And he said, I can see that. And I said, what are we going to do? He said, I had no idea. And I said, when you were digging all that dirt, what were you thinking? And he said, hurry up and get done for you got home. You know, that doing that stuff. behind your back. You know, that was his autonomous action. It made me mad for a long time, and it didn't get better. It got worse, because when he finished with his water garden, it looked like a swimming pool, like I say, and then he decided he got these big sheets of marble, and then he was out there with a sledgehammer breaking them up so he could have this mosaic type look. You couldn't buy marble scraps for that? You know, I mean, my God, J.D. And so anyway, it looked like the decking around the swimming pool when he got through. And I told him, I said, it's hideous. And not only that, the dogs play soccer. And I said, if the dogs go flinging across the backyard with their ball and it goes in the pond, they're going to go in the pond after it. He said, well, they can swim. I said, how long? You can't get out of 5 foot of water. It's not like you can go to the bank, for God's sake. I said, they can't swim for a half hour and then launch themselves out of the pond. He said, you're a fanatic. And so this went on for quite some time. And I mean, I was really, and the more that happened, the angrier I got. And I told him, I said, it's going to be bad. And then one day he came home, and J.D. had a turtle refuge out in the back where the box turtles, he rescued them. And 2 of them were swimming in the pond as long as they could. And then they bellied up in the pond. Because they're not water turtles. They drowned. And J.D. was just absolutely beside himself, because these are his pet turtles, you know. They eat strawberries out of his hand, this kind of stuff. And he's going, oh my God. And I said, better the turtle than one of the dogs, because the dogs are my kids. And I said, I would have had to kill you for sure if that had been one of them. But you know, I'm praying about it. I know I've got this tremendous resentment, and I can't seem to let go. I just can't seem to let go. And I'm praying about it, and all of a sudden, God works in such weird ways. He put a new channel on our cable, and it was the Home and Garden channel. And they had a thing on there about water gardens, and I'm going, oh my God. But anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm watching it, and they were talking about a gardener's dream and all this kind of stuff, and how they have to be 5 or 6 years old before they begin to look right and do and all this stuff. And I thought, oh, if I could live so long. And then I realized, you know, I just didn't like the safety aspect more than anything. I didn't like the fact that ball could just go right into the pond. And so I told him, I said, this just isn't working. And I said, but I can tell you what I've been thinking today. And you just listen and hear me out. Everywhere I've been traveling for years and years across the country, U.S. and Canada, I would bring home rocks. Big rocks. And I had a big rock garden around a big cactus thing in the back. And the big tall rock garden kept anybody from getting zapped by the cactus. And I said, I will give you the rocks from my rock garden if you will put it around the pond so that the dogs can't just go zipping into it the way they can. And he said, you would do that? And I said, yeah. And I said, in fact, yeah, I'll even get rid of the cactus in order to do that. And he said, okay. So that weekend we're out there doing it, and as we're doing it, I said, and if you'd like, I can build you a waterfall. He said, waterfall? I said, yeah, I learned how to do it watching the Home and Garden channel, you know. And he said, okay. And it was so fun because, see, now we were working on it together. It wasn't like him doing one thing, me doing another, and us fighting in the middle. We were working together as a team. You know, so that autonomous action of his taught us a lot of stuff about working together and running stuff past one another instead of, because, I mean, that war went on for at least 6 or 7 months. It was not a happy time at our house. And you'd think, well, you know, you've been in the program a long time. Yeah, but you know, I know people who've been in the program 25 years and still get a divorce. So, I mean, it can happen. Tradition 5, each marriage or relationship has but one primary purpose, to serve as an expression of God's love. And I cannot transmit God's love in a relationship if I don't have God's love inside of me, if I don't know what that is. And when I came to the program, I heard a lady at a meeting one night, and she told us a definition of love, and I liked it real well, and I still do. She said, love is acceptance, understanding, and tenderness. It does not strangle, grab, or possess. It sees the other person as a human being, not as a god or an idol, but just a human being possessing all the strengths and weaknesses of all other human beings. Love doesn't ask to be served, only when it may serve. Quiet, gentle, trusting, it is comprised of affection and desires without anxiety. And I left that meeting and I came home and I told JD, I said, I don't know how to love. I don't love you. I don't think I know how to love a person according to that definition. I've never loved anyone in my life according to that definition. And it gave me a goal to work toward. Especially the quiet and trusting, comprised of affection and desire without fear, without anxiety. And see, I was always fearful that something was going to happen and he wasn't going to love me anymore. That was one of the things that really bothered me in early sobriety, was the fact that he was changing and I was afraid that he wouldn't love me anymore. And the reason was I didn't love me. When you don't love yourself or see yourself as being worthy of love, you will never trust the love from someone else, because they can't love you enough to overcome that. Only God can. And so I had to find out, what is God's kind of love? What is God's kind of love? And God's kind of love to me is it's unconditional, it's comforting, it's got a lot of forgiveness, it's strong yet gentle, it's trustworthy, it's constant, it's consistent, it's all-powerful. It's everything I need it to be on any given day of my life. That's what God's love is to me. And so if my only purpose is to be able to express God's love in my relationship, it's not what I want, but what God wants. And so that comes through prayer and my communication with God and asking God to help me to express His love to other people. And I found this real important in that worst relationship of my life, which was with my mother. You know, I hated my mother from the time I was 12 years old. I didn't like her much before then, but I started hating her then. And so all through my life, we had this really confrontational type relationship. And every time I'd go over to my mother's, you know, I would always get my feelings hurt one way or another, because I would always be going over there just wanting just one word of love from her, just one little bit of acceptance from her. And I couldn't seem to ever get that. We'd get into an argument or something and we just couldn't be together 5 minutes. And then a girl came in my group and she made the suggestion that what helped in her relationship was she asked God to let her see her mother as He sees her. And so she began to pray that, you know, God, let me see my mother as you see her. And that's what I did with my mother. And I want you to know it took me a long time. It took over 5 years of praying that prayer. And then one day I was able to find some relief in that area. I was able to allow my mother to be who she was, to accept her the way she was, and to realize that, you know, when God looks at you, He looks at you through the eyes of His creation. You're His creation, and God cannot hate that He creates, you know. And so He will always look at people through love. He'll look to your higher good. He's not going to look for all your defects. He's going to look to the God within you. And so that's what I had to do with my mother. I had to look for the good things within her. And that was real difficult when you've spent a lifetime being judgmental and critical and looking for the bad things. And now I realize, you know, my mother, she may not have been educated, but she was very smart. She was very talented. Other people seemed to like my mother. Why couldn't I like my mother, you know? And the thing I realized, I didn't have to like my mother. I just had to accept my mother. Because acceptance of somebody exactly the way they are is the way God loves you. He accepts you regardless if you're being a horse's butt today or not. You know, God doesn't have any limitations on what He does to love you. He loves you anyway, in spite of the way you are. And so that's what I had to do. I had to learn to give comfort and encouragement. I had to learn to listen. You know, when my mother would call on the telephone, my mother lived alone from the time I was 19 years old. And she was an old woman even back then. And 'cause I'm a change of life baby. And so my mother would call and she would tell me about her day. She would tell me what she had for breakfast that morning. She would tell me what all she did that way. I did this. She was a dressmaker. She would say, I did this or that, and I put in a 9-inch brown zipper. Stuff bored me to tears. And so I had a tendency when she would start, you didn't ever have to respond. You know, she just went on. And so I could lay the phone down, and every once in a while I'd pick it up, and lay it back down again. And I thought that was so funny that she never knew that I wasn't on the phone. And my sponsor told me, she says, and that is so disrespectful. So totally disrespectful. She said, did it ever occur to you your mother is sharing her day? What else would she have to share? Isn't this what you share with people, what's going on in your life? This is what's going on in her life, and it may not seem like much to you, but it's all she's got. And she said, why don't you try to be a little loving and listen? Just give her your undivided attention and listen to what she's saying. And yes, her life was a lot of dull, boring stuff according to the book of Mary Pearl, but it was all she had. She was given the very best she had, and I kept saying not good enough. And that was being judgmental and critical. It was not loving her through God's eyes. And so when I began to do that and realize that's exactly what she was doing, I began to feel different about my mother. You see, the work we do here makes us different. It may not make them any different, but it makes you different. And I kept on doing that and doing that. And then there came the day when my mother said to me, you know, I began to try to act like a kind and loving daughter, and I didn't know how to do that. I had to go to people who knew how to do that in the program, who had good relationships with their mother, and say, what do you do? I don't have a clue how to do this. And then I would do what they said, you know, and it was so agonizingly slow. But you know, this is a lifetime of crap that you're going to have to overcome. And you got to be willing to put the past in the past and move forward with what you have today. And then as I was able to do that, my mother was able to share with me. You see, my mother lived in an alcoholic situation until she was 13 years old. Her father drank. He was a very mean alcoholic. She had scars all over her body where he had cut her with knives and things. Her mother drank with him. All of her brothers and sisters drank. My mother was the only one who didn't drink. And she had been terribly physically abused. She had been sexually abused. And finally, one day when she was 13, he tried to rape her, and she hit him in the head with a stick of stove wood and ran away. And she lived on the streets. Back in the early 1900s, it wasn't real fashionable to do that. She ran over 600 miles before she stopped and felt safe to get away from him. You know? And if you've had to live like that, you might not be so wrapped too tight otherwise. And see, the thing of it is, my mother said to me, you know, she said, why, when your daddy died, did you become such an ornery kid? And I said, because I was mad at you for not loving me. And she said, what do you mean I didn't love you? I gave a roof over your head. I gave you clothes to wear. I gave you food to eat. It was something I never had. You see, she had given the very best from where she came from. And you know something? That day it became enough for me. Because I was able to see what a struggle her life had been. You see, it's not always all about us. You never know where that other person is coming from. And she had done the very best she could for me, and I knew it. And I asked her, I said, how can I make it up to you for all the things that I've done all these years? How can I make it up to you? And she said, forgive me for not being the kind of mom you needed. You know? And so I said, Mama, I forgive you. And my mother got up and she walked across the room. And for the first time in my life, my mama gave me a hug. You know, there's something about this God kind of love stuff that works. It really, really works. Part of that, too, is learning how to be positive instead of negative all the time. I never realized how much that I'm the kind of a person that you come in and you're really excited about something, and I steal your good feelings about it because I think of all the negatives about what you've just trying to show me or tell me or share with me. I didn't realize I was that kind of a person. Tradition 6, a partner ought not be overly supportive spiritually, emotionally, or physically to the marriage or relationship, lest problems of ego gratification divert him or her from the primary purpose. Now, there's a difference between caregiving and caretaking. I didn't know that for a long time. I've gotten a real good lesson in that since November of 1999. My sister was in the front seat of my car, and she had kidney failure and her heart stopped, and she went without. By the time I got her to the hospital through bumper-to-bumper traffic, she was down about 10 to 12 minutes, so she doesn't have any memory. They brought her back, but they didn't bring her memory back. And so I had to learn how to give her care instead of taking care. The thing about it is, for Dorothy, she's got to do the same repetitive stuff over and over and over. And if you do it for her, she won't remember how to do it for herself tomorrow if you do it for her today. And so you have to allow her to go through the struggle she has to go instead of trying to help her and make it easier for her. You know, I've had to learn to do that. And, you know, it's just real human nature to want to get in there and help. But I know that when you do that, it doesn't really help her. And see, there was the thing within me, I had this real need to be needed. A tremendous need. My self-esteem was dependent on other people needing me and other people's attention. It was a hard thing to have to let go of. And I had to let go of control. And that control was fear-based, you know. If J.D. didn't need me, well, he might not want me. And I didn't realize how that when we first met, I began a very systematic thing of doing things and doing all these things for him to create that need so that he wouldn't leave me. You know, you can say, I want you, I need you, I love you, and need sounds better. It gives you better job security. You know, loving you is not the big deal, but they may need you, you know. And before long, especially with the drinking, we developed a mother-child relationship. And I gave him instructions on how to do, when to do, where to do, what to do, instead of information. And now, okay, he gets sober and he's trying to be a viable member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's trying to grow up and mature, and I'm feeling my job is being threatened. Because, you know, I've been doing all these things, and now he wants to do... Can you believe he wanted to touch the checkbook? I couldn't believe he would want to touch the checkbook, for God's sake, you know. But anyway, I remember one night in particular, he was working nights after he got sober, and I had heard the weather forecast, and they said we were going to have snow. And so I gave him the information. I said, J.D., it's going to snow tomorrow while you're at work. And he said, oh, and I said, yeah. So you better put some extra weight over the back axles in the truck so that you won't, you know, slide all over the road. And so when he came in the next morning, I said, how was it? He said, it was awful. I slid all over the road. And I said, well, did you not put some weight in across the axles? And he said, no. And I said, why not? He said, because you told me to. And see, that's very much the thing with us. When people are trying to force you to do something, you'll go against your own, what you know is a better thing to do, just because they're not going to tell you what to do. That kind of thing. My first trip, I came to Hawaii in 1980. I fell in love with Hawaii back then. I actually stayed in this hotel in 1980. When I was here. My sister and I used to come to Hawaii every 3 years and stay a month. We would stay here on Maui, and we'd go to a week on Oahu, and then we would go to Kauai, and then we go to the Big Island. Sometimes we'd even go over to Molokai for several days. And so we really, really enjoyed and loved it. But my first time I came to Hawaii, I was afraid to leave him at home alone. Because what would he do if something went wrong? Because I handled everything. And now here he was sober, but how was this going to work? And I told my sister, I said, well, I'm going to call him when I get there, and I'm going to say I'm here, and I'm not going to call him again until we get home. And she said, you're not going to call for a month? And I said, nope. She said, why not? And I said, because he's going to tell me something's going wrong, and I'm going to try to fix it from Hawaii, and it's going to ruin my trip, worrying about what he's doing or not doing right, and I'm just not going to do it. And so that was how I detached when I first did. It was so fun for him because everything that could go wrong went wrong. First was the motor burn out on the attic fan, and then the refrigerator died. And then there's the washing machine. Something happened. It was sort of a mechanical plague that attacked our house while I was gone. And it was so funny, everything but the washing machine was funny to me when I got back, because one of the guys that he sponsored worked at an apartment complex as the maintenance man. I've never understood how this works, because they took apart my Maytag washing machine. And the Maytag repairman told me it would be easier to buy a new one than it would cost them to put this one back together again. You know. But he managed to get through it, and I said, how did you get through all of that? And he said, well, I didn't know what was on service contract or what was on a guarantee or nothing. And he said, I was in a panic, and then it hit me. Call another Al-Anon. So he called one of the girls I sponsored, and she said, well, JD, if you'll look on Mary Pearl's desk in there in her office, she's got a Rolodex, and I'd be willing to bet you on that Rolodex she's got a card for everything that needs to be done over there at that house. And she came over, and they worked together, and they got everything fixed. I said, well, thank God for Al-Anon. But I didn't have to do it. See, that was the great part, you know. But I learned, and he told me, he said, I've never been so embarrassed. He said, when somebody else knew more about what was going on in our home, he said, I don't want to be left out of that anymore. He said, I want to be part of the process here. And that was so hard to let go of that kind of control when you've been doing that. But we found that it works better for us, you know, when we work as a team. We also have in Al-Anon the silver rule. I don't know I've ever heard them talk about it in AA, but it's we don't do for another what they can do for themselves. Because, you know, we're the big helpers of the world, so we don't need to be doing stuff for people when they can do it from themselves, because when you do, you deprive them of the opportunity to grow and learn. Because how do you learn what to do? All my life I've learned what to do by doing it wrong. You learn through the experience of doing it the wrong way, and then you know to do it a different way. There's another thing about this. Are you too needy? Are you too emotionally needy? And if you are, I think that one of the things you do is you question a lot. You want to know what's the matter. Somebody comes in, they look a little sad or whatever, and go, what's the matter? What's the matter? Are you okay? Are you okay? Did you have a bad day at work? No, I'm okay. Really? You don't look okay. And then in a few minutes you go, are you sure you're okay? And JD says, well, you keep that up, I won't be. You just... See, the thing about it is we want to fix them when we see them not happy, when we see them not whatever we think they ought to be. You want to fix them. And see, we're big about wanting to know who, what, when, where, how, and why. We want to know all of those things. But in our book it tells us that what we are meant to know will come to us without any action on our part. We don't have to find out. And I found out that is really the best way, because then that way you don't have to worry about it before the fact. When it's supposed to be, it will be. Tradition 7. Each partner ought to strive to be fully self-supporting. Now you say, well, now, wasn't that what we just did? No. Tradition 7. Each partner ought to strive to be fully self-supporting. Now you say, well, now, wasn't that what we just did? No. This is being overly supportive to the other person. This one is all about taking care of yourself. And when I'm so busy taking care of other people, I don't have time to take care of me. And I also found that one of the reasons I didn't take care of me was I was afraid. I was afraid. I didn't like going to the doctors. Doctors scared me. I didn't like going to the dentist. Hate dentists. You know, they're absolutely the lowest of the low. My God. You know, they hurt you. And so I had all these fears on the inside. I didn't realize how much I was so fear-based and had to need. But I found out that now I can take care of myself. You know, I used to have to dress him before we went anywhere. And he would say, what do you want me to wear? And then lay it out, and I'd lay it out, and he'd look at it and say, I don't want to wear that. And so then we'd have the argument. And then he would get dressed, and then finally I get in, and somebody's calling, and where are y'all? And he'll say, you know, we're always late. Takes Mary Pearl for forever. Well, it was taking Mary Pearl for forever because she couldn't get to her own stuff because she was busy taking care of JD. And I was telling my sponsor, she said, quit dressing him. I said, what do you mean quit dressing him? She said, he's 40-some-odd years old. He ought to be able to dress himself. I said, oh, my God, but you don't realize I've done it. He doesn't know how to match colors and clothes and all this stuff. She said, well, when do you think he's going to learn? Oh, and she says, now you can quit dressing him and not bitch about it, or you can continue dressing him and not bitch about it. I don't like my choices. I don't like my choices at all. But I made the determination that I would not dress him anymore. So I made the grand announcement. I'm not your mother anymore. I am not going to dress you. You're on your own. And so he's sitting in there and he's thinking about that. And it gets time to get ready for the meeting. And I'm in there getting dressed. And he said, what am I going to wear? And I said, I don't have a clue. And he said, well, lay out what you want. And I said, I told you, I'm not dressing you. And he said, oh, come on. And I said, no, I'm through. I'm retiring. I'm not going to do it anymore. And then I'm in there, And so he's going to force me to dress him. He comes out and he's wearing a shirt and pair of pants that don't even come close to going together. And I know he knows that because, you see, he overshot the runway. He has a shoe on one foot and a boot on the other. I never said a word. We went to the meeting. And when we got back, he said, I've never been so embarrassed in all my life. And I said, well, that's your own doing. And he said, I just don't know. He said, you've done it for me so long. He said, I don't even know what goes with one. I said, well, you're going to have to learn. And he said, well, will you do this? If I come out and I look completely ridiculous like I did tonight, he said, would you just say to me, would you try something else? And I said, yeah, I can do that. And he's been dressing himself ever since. He does really well now with it. It took him a long time, but he does pretty good with it. It was also funny, the first time he went to buy new clothes, he told them the size he was years ago. Because, you see, when I would buy the clothes, I would be upgrading the clothes and getting all the different stuff. Because when he quit drinking, he weighed 125 pounds. And then all of a sudden sobriety comes, and so did the little Porky. And so he began to get bigger and bigger, and he went in and he took a pair of clothes and he went into the dressing room there at Dillard's, and I heard him in there, MERP. I said, what? He said, I can't even get in these. I said, I know, that's not your size. He said, well, what do I wear? And I said, well, this is the size I've been getting you. And he said, I had no idea. See, it was one of those things. He just went and got the clothes. He never realized that the size was changing because I'm handling everything. I'm taking care of everything. And it was keeping him from being self-supporting through his own. And like I say, I'm making sure he gets to the doctor. I'm making sure he gets to the dentist, all these things. And then all of a sudden it's my turn. And I was terrified. I was just terrified, especially of the dentist. I got hurt when I was 9 years old at the dentist, and the dentist dropped a drill down where he had just pulled a tooth, and the permanent tooth never came in. He damaged it, and I was just hysterical. And so every time what I would do when I'd get a toothache is I would do nothing. And if you do nothing long enough, you've done something. What you've done is you've lost a tooth. Because after a while it will abscess and you won't be able to have anything hot in your mouth, anything cold in your mouth, and you're going to lose your tooth. And so here I am. I'm at the hospital one day with my mother who thought she was having a heart attack. And I was gritting my teeth and a filling fell out. And it was a filling I'd had put in 26 years before, and I hadn't been to a dentist since. And I am just, oh my God. Mother's heart attack paled in significance. Because this is me now, see. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just in a state of shock, and the nurse comes out and she said it was a hiatal hernia. She's not having a heart attack. I said, okay. And she said, but we're going to keep her overnight for observation. And I said, you don't understand. I lost a filling. And she just looked at me, and so I'm there, and I'm going, oh, God, I can do what I've always done. I can get what I've always done. I'll get what I've always got. I'm going to have to lose a tooth. It's going to be painful. Oh, my God. Or you could go to the dentist. And so I'm there in the emergency room. They have phone books in the emergency room. I go right over to the phone books, and I'm saying, God, you know how I am about this. And so I look under D for dentist, in the yellow pages, and there's a half-page ad, we cater to cowards. I'm going, holy God! It's a God deal! And so I call, and I'd explain to them about I hurt when I was 9 years old. You know how we have to tell them the whole thing. And the girl said, can you come right now? Now, can you believe going and calling a dentist that you've never gone to before? Can you come right now? And I said, oh, right now? And she said, well, yes. And I went, oh. But you see, God knew if I waited, I would never go to the dentist. If I couldn't do it right now, well, I was more willing to do something different. And so I drove over and found the place, and it was upstairs, and there was a little hand, looked like a little hand, like an arrow, and it said, "We cater to cowards," upstairs. And I go running up the stairs, and I'm in there, I'm just hyperventilating, and she said, "You must be Miss Thompson." And I said, "How did you know?" I've just called her and I've described what a nut I am, and here I am, and really, who else could it have been, So I'm sitting there and she hands me this, they want you to fill out all this stuff. I have to look at my driver's license to find out my date of birth. I am that scared. I'm sitting there and I'm just going, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God." And all of a sudden I heard the FM station on their music there in the office. And there was the disc jockey, and she was talking, and it's like, "Oh, that's Ann. That's my grandbaby in sponsorship. She's the DJ at this FM station." I had forgotten all about that. That's Ann's voice. It's like, okay, God, you're right here, because you see, there's Ann. It's something familiar in a really scary place. And then they open the door, and the girl says, "Miss Thompson," and I go in, and the last time I was in this dentist chair, 26 years before, it looks like a barber chair with a tarantula hanging over it. This is what it looked like to me. And instead, here was this nice little thing, and it's looking out the windows right out on the golf course and a fountain out there. I'm going, wow. And then you had those big light panels in the ceiling. And when they lean you back in that little chaise, I leaned back, and there in this light panel right over my head, it said, "God, grant me the serenity." It was a serenity prayer right over my head. And I knew that God was there with me. And then the dentist came in, and he's very, very soft-spoken. And he said, "I understand you're afraid." Yes! And I happened to look at my chart over there, and in big red letters it says, "Super Chicken." I didn't care. I wanted them to know, what you're dealing with here, And the bottom line is I've been able to go ever since to the dentist. And, the thing of it is, here last month I had a really bad episode over there at the dentist I've been going to now all these years. And he went through a nerve with a needle when he did the Novocaine. And I've had dental pain every day since. And I've got TMJ going now over here, and I've got a problem with a filling. And I told him, I said, "Now, Dr. P," I said, I'm going to Hawaii, and I don't want to have crap in my mouth in Hawaii. I don't want that to be hurting. And he said, "We're going to do everything we can." And it's a lot better than it has been. It's still there, but it's a lot better. But the thing of it is, before, I would have never gone back. And I've gone back 4 times about this same situation. But with the nerve thing, they can't do much about that right now. But I've learned to take care of me. And you see, if I can't take care of me, how am I going to take care of my sister? I've got to be able to be there for my sister, because my sister and I are the last members of our family. And we neither have any children. I'm all in the world she has of a natural relative, and she's all I have. And so we have to be there for one another. And Dorothy can no longer be there in the way she was. But she is there, and I love her, and she's my sister, and I'm real grateful that God gives me the ability to go and enjoy her. And she loved Hawaii. This was her favorite place in the whole world to come, and she doesn't remember ever having been here. But I go and I tell her, "Dorothy, we went to Hawaii, and here's what we did." And so she can relive it for a little while. And then 15 minutes later, her memory is gone. But it's good for her, because she'll just sit there and she'll hold her hand and she'll say, "We had a good time, didn't we?" And I'll say, "Yes, Dorothy, we had a wonderful time. You loved it, and you had a great time there." And so when I go back, there was a part of me, I told JD, for 5 years I had been invited to go to one place or another here in Hawaii, and I just couldn't seem to bring myself to come without my sister. And then I realized that even if I brought Dorothy 15 minutes after we got on the plane, she would never know we had been here. So I told JD, I said, "You go with me and I will make new memories." And treasure your memories, because, see, that's what you think you have. But now, see, that's like my sister said to me at Christmas. I said, "Dorothy, what would you like?" She said, "I'd love to have my memories back." See, so you never know. You never know what life is going to bring you. Tradition 8. Our marriage or relationship should remain forever a free-giving relationship, one to the other. Are you a scorekeeper? Did you know that comparisons are a form of scorekeeping? What I do compared to what someone else does, But you've received freely of God's love, so therefore freely you should give it back. We should not be scorekeepers. We do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. And there's a spiritual principle that says whatever you do for others will come back to you. And you see, I miss this because, all my life I'm looking to my mother and I'm saying, why can't you be this way? Guess who was being this way for me my whole life? My sister. My sister was loving me the way I wanted Mother to love me. My sister was doing things with me and for me that I wanted for my mother. My mother didn't have the ability to do those things, but God had someone in my life that was doing them. And guess what? I took it for granted. And I felt like I had missed it. Because you're looking over here, you're getting it from over here, you can't see it. You can't see it. But rest assured that whatever you need, God is giving you right here, right now, if you will but open your eyes and look at it, We have a responsibility here that you've received freely, so therefore you should give freely. The first person that I was able to receive from in the program was my sponsor. And she told me my responsibility was not to her, but to pass it on to someone else. That's how you pay your sponsor back, is when you pass it on to someone else. JD, when we were going to our very first conference, he had been out of work for 6 months, and I had the sole support of the family, and we were having all these really, really hard financial times. And my sponsor said, "Are y'all going to the old granddad conference?" And we said, "What's that?" And she said, "It's the biggest conference, the oldest one west of the Mississippi River." And she said they have it down in Hot Springs, and it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday conference. And she said, "You get so much out of it." And I said, "Well, how in the world would we be able to afford to go? He's not working, and I'm doing all I can. I just don't see how." She said, "I just asked you if you wanted to go. It was a yes or no question." And funny, people ask us a yes or no question, and we have to, talk for 30 minutes. And so I went home, and she said, "Why don't you pray about it and see what God will do?" And so I went home, and I was talking to JD about it, and he said, well, his sponsor had told him the same thing. And I said, "Well, you want to pray about it?" He said, "Together?" I said, "Well, yeah, I guess we could." Out loud. And I said, "Well, not if you don't want to." And he said, "I don't know." So that night when we got ready to go to bed, I'm over on my side of the bed and he's on his. And I said, "You want to pray together on this? Let's get on the same side of the bed." So he came over and we held hands, and it was simple. "God, we'd like to go to the conference, we think. And if it's your will, show us how to get there." Pretty simple. And then we went to bed. And the next morning, I got up, I went to work, I used our Watts line, I called down to Hot Springs, I made a reservation. Took whatever action I could. 30 minutes later, JD called me. He had found a job. In 30 minutes, he had found a job. And we began to figure out, if we ate cheese and crackers in the room, how we could get by to get to that conference with the registration and the hotel bill. And how would we ever afford to go? How would we do that? And so we figured it up, and I was talking to my sponsor, and she said, "Well, now you cannot not pay a bill to go to the conference, because then that's taking money away from somebody you owe the money to." She said, "You have to save this in addition to." So we had this little fun going over here, and then when JD came in and he said, "What will I wear?" And I said, "What do you mean, what will you wear?" He said, "Well, you know how my clothes are." So I'd forgotten. Because, see, JD smoked, and this was the days of polyester. And if you smoke and you drink, they had holes, little burns all in his clothes from the cigarette ashes, He looked like a colander. And it was awful. And so I said, okay. And so I said, well, I don't know what we're going to do about that. And then there came an ad in the mail from a mail order house in Chicago, and they said that they had 2 pairs of pants, a reversible vest, and a sport coat for $49.95. I said, it can't be much. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. It's funny, we would get that about the same time. So we ordered it, and then here came the week of the convention, and we are $35 short. There is no way we can go. That bare minimum, we are $35 short. And the mailman brought the suit that day. And JD's trying it on. I said, well, you can try it on. We're going to have to send it back because I'm going to have to call in the morning and cancel the conference because we just are $35 short, and that's all there is to it. He said, well, we prayed, we tried, we did our best. Evidently, it's not God's will. I said, evidently. And so he's putting on the thing, and his suit looked really good. It did not look like a cheap suit, you know, it really looked good. And he got on that second pair of pants, and he's walking around. He said, wait a minute, there's something wadded up here in this pants. And he pulled out a 20, a 10, and a 5. And I looked at him and I said, I would never have thought to tell God to put it there. You know, my higher power does stuff in the most bizarre way, so there's no mistaking who's doing it, you know. And so we sat down in the living room floor and we hugged each other and we cried because we were going to get to go to our first conference of Alcoholics Anonymous that August of 1977. And we went to that conference, and the people of Alcoholics Anonymous in Al-Anon were very loving. And every meal, somebody invited us to go with them for a meal, so we didn't have to eat cheese and crackers in the room. And then it was Saturday night, and they have a big banquet, and all the tickets were sold out. But they had closed-circuit TV in your room, or you could go down in another room. They had a big screen. You could watch the speaker in there. And we were feeling sorry for ourselves, because we weren't going to get to be there with everybody else, you know. No matter, you know how you are. No matter what you get, you can always feel whiny about something else. And there was a knock at our door, and I went over to the door. There was no one there. And as I started back across the room, J.D. said, what's that in the floor? And it was an envelope, and I opened it, and it had 2 banquet tickets in it. And the banquet tickets were assigned to the table with the speakers. So not only did we get to go, but we got to meet and visit with all the speakers that night. And it just made Alcoholics Anonymous come alive for us. And by the grace of God, J.D. and I both celebrated 30 years of recovery this year because the people loved us and have been there for us every step of the way. And you have to learn on this one too, to how to receive gracefully. You know, that's like people try to give you something and you go, no. You've got to be able to say thank you and it be enough. And see, I always felt obligated. If you did something for me and I wasn't able to reciprocate, I felt obligated. And that's just ego and everything. And so later on, I was sponsoring this girl, and she was dating this high-powered attorney, and they were wanting us to come over for a party at their house right after Christmas. And we got over there, and he had this little modest 14-room dwelling. And he was a corporate attorney. And anyway, he still had his Christmas tree up, and I was sitting there being judgmental and critical. And I was thinking, you know, here it is after Christmas. Why didn't he have the Christmas tree down? What is the matter? And then he went on to say his mother had put the tree up. And I'm like, oh, God, what an emotional cripple. His mother's in there putting his tree up. And here's a man in his 40s. But you see, it was just the kind of thing I used to do for J.D. And his mother was doing it for him. But anyway, after the meal, he was talking about something, and one of them was saying, Mary Pearl, why don't you have a computer? Because you do a lot of writing and everything. And I said, oh, I would probably never learn how to work a computer. I know how to do a typewriter upside down backwards, but I said I can do shorthand typing, all like that, but I've never used a computer. And they said, well, why not? And I said, well, I wouldn't even know where to go to. I've heard terms like RIM or RAM or RUM or something, and I don't even know what these things mean, but I knew that the key phrase was IBM compatible. You'd hear that a lot, you know. And so, anyway, they said, well, the reason we have the tree up, and I'm thinking, yeah, what is it? And he said, well, Santa Claus left something for you here. And I said, what? And he brought me this box about like this, about that, and I opened it, and it was a keyboard. And he said, there you are. And I said, it's a keyboard. Is this like an add a pearl necklace? You know, I save up and I get me another piece. I mean, is this what we're doing here? He said, no, I just didn't wrap the rest. He said, we're redoing our computer system at work, and I'm giving you a computer, a printer, and the whole thing with the color screen and the whole stuff. And I went, you're kidding me. And he said, no. I said, is it IBM compatible? He said, Mary Pearl, look at it. It is an IBM. Oh. You know, and I was able to say thank you. And that's how I got my very first computer. And it was so funny, I thought at the time, because the man's last name was Grace. So by God's grace, I got a computer. I thought that was good. Okay, let's go on to tradition 9. A family or relationship should be pliable in its organization, but our group conscience may appoint certain persons responsible to serve various functions. You see, growth is done individually, not as a unit. But you both have to grow, and you have to allow the other person to grow in their time. And we learned that in our relationship at this point, we needed to have some written guidelines for what was acceptable and unacceptable. You know how you're always thinking it in your head, or this is unacceptable. How do they know that was unacceptable? They have a clue that was unacceptable. So we sat down. Now, our guidelines for our relationship may be different than yours, but these were ours. Number 1, God is the head of our household. Number 2, no alcohol or drugs on the premises. Now, I know a lot of people have company over and they serve alcohol, and that's fine. Like I say, these are ours. Alcohol never brought any joy into our home, so we don't do that. Number 3, no infidelity. We both been there, done that, got T-shirts, doesn't work. Number 4, no expenditures of over $100 without prior discussion and agreement. Now, we'd have to change that if we lived over here. It'd have to be a much higher standard than that over here. No obligations or commitments for one another without prior discussion and agreement. Personal privacy and quiet time. We each have to have our individual space. We have special what we call our time or our date nights. We had to focus. Instead of just me focusing on me and him focusing on him, we had to come together and focus on our relationship. Not to the exclusion of your individual recovery, but taking what you get from your steps in your individual recovery and bringing it together. Common courtesy. No dredging up of the past and not beating each other with a weapon. That's like, this reminds me of back in 1971. This is exactly, and he would go, my God, And then one night I was doing one of those little things and he said, wrong husband. How quickly we forget, We've been together so long, it just seems like it, And we try to use the rules of healthy communication that are from the dilemma of the alcoholic marriage. It's discuss, don't attack, talk in a low voice, stick to the subject, listen to the other person's complaints, and don't make demands or ultimatums. Do those things. Another one of ours is don't try to work the other person's program or tell them how to. That was another one we'd get into it over. After God, personal recovery comes first before your partner. Getting rid of the untouchables. We had subjects that we could not talk about without getting into it. Some things from the past. Like, for instance, we couldn't talk about his family or my family. Because if I agreed with him about his family, or if he agreed with me, you know how it is. I can say anything I want to about him, but don't you say anything about him, that kind of thing. We would get into it. And so we finally got to where we would get rid of those subjects, and we did it by, we would sit down together in chairs facing one another and holding hands. And we would talk it out. Instead of, whereas in the past you'd do your shot, he'd do his shot, and then you'd go off and be mad. And then it would come up again later. And then it'd keep coming back up over the years. We would sit there, if it took 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it took, and we talked it out until we were both okay. And then it wasn't an untouchable anymore. It took all the power away from those untouchables. Honesty and trust must be observed. We try to work as a team wherever possible. And any joint decisions regarding change in our house or our yard are done as together, not an individual. See, that one came as a result of the water garden. And then we had the duties around the house, those daily things that it takes to keep a house going. What do you do about those? I made a list of all the ones that I like doing. He made a list of the ones now what do you do with the 3/4 that are left? You take turns. That's what it is. And we would say, okay, I can do it this week, and you can do it next week. We would take turns so that the things you didn't like to do, they weren't yours to do forever and ever and ever. And what we found that over the years, it really doesn't matter anymore whose job or what job. We're both working for the common good of our relationship. So whoever sees it needs to be done, does it, and keeps their mouth shut. And we just go on happy as frogs in the sunshine. But in the beginning, we had to have that list to go by. JD, by nature, is a pack rat, and I'm very organized. And we had to reach an acceptable standard for living together. And I told him there were certain common rooms of the house he could not clutter. I can't live in clutter. I cannot function in chaos and clutter. I just can't. And he can. But you know, it's been funny over the years how that's evolved is the fact is that now he appreciates the not having the clutter and everything a lot better. And back in 1991 when my mother died, it took us 2 or 3 months to go through her stuff. Going over there every day. My mother never threw anything away. And I said, you know, I can't do this. I said, it wasn't an order. I can't go through with it. And my sister and I worked diligently for a long, long time. And I said, you know what this has taught me? I can simplify my life. I can get rid of all the unnecessary stuff in my life. I don't have to have a wardrobe for 3,000 people. That's not necessary, you know. And my mother's thing was if I give it away or if I get rid of it, what if I need it again? My God is big enough to bring it back. If I need something again, God will replace it with something the same or better. And I don't worry. So twice a year when we have the change of seasons back home, when we change out our closet, anything that I haven't used in the last year, it goes. And we have a center there for AA in Al-Anon called the Wolf Street Center. And they have a little boutique, and you can donate stuff to that, and then people can buy it for just darn near nothing. But you know, there's no sense of something sitting in my closet somebody else can be using. That just doesn't compute to me anymore. And so that's what we do. And so we don't have an abundance of things because we've learned people are more important than things. And we have a lot more fun when we don't have all that garbage to have to deal with. It's just a world better. Tradition 10. A relationship should avoid heated controversy. No one wins in controversy. You both will lose. And when you do, so will be your relationship. Now, when I got married the first time, I had the big church wedding and everything. And the minister said to me and my first husband, don't ever go to bed mad. What I didn't tell him was I've been mad since I was 12 years old. I could never sleep again if I couldn't go to bed mad. You know, that just wasn't going to work for me because, you see, being mad and getting even was my way. That was my thing. Revenge was a way of life for me. I didn't know it was a defect of character until I did an inventory. I thought it was one of my better traits, actually. What I found out in sobriety was that I knew very little about J.D. Very little. I didn't know what he liked or disliked. Now, that's sort of amazing when you think we've been together for years at that point. And how it happened one night, I was in there and I said to him, J.D., would you like some ice cream? I'm going to go to the store. And he said, yeah. He said, would you get me some pecan praline ice cream? Excuse me? And he said, I want some pecan praline. I said, you always eat vanilla. He said, no, you buy vanilla. But you asked me what I would like, and I told you pecan praline. And since when have you liked pecan praline ice cream? He said, it's always been my favorite. You never said anything. He said, I didn't want to have the conversation we're having. And I said, that's so amazing to me. And so a few days later, he comes in and he says, you know, another thing. I hate the way you fold my underwear. And I said, what? He said, I hate the way you fold my underwear. Well, see, I come from a military family and I roll everything military style. And you can pack stuff in a heartbeat when you're doing it that way. You always know what you got and what have you. And he said, I don't like it that way. And I said, since when do you not like it like that? He said, since we've been together. I said, J.D., we have been married 9 years. We were together 4 years before that. you didn't like something and you never said anything for all. Chady, I can't feature that because if I didn't like it for 9 minutes, I would have to say something about it. And he said, I didn't want to have the conversation we're having now. See, his thing was no controversy no confrontation, no nothing. And so he would swallow stuff down and get resentments about it. And so here he was, and I talked to my sponsor. She said, he's trying to grow. He's trying to let you know. And I said, I'm not mad about it. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that he would go that mad. I said, I fold his underwear. I don't give a damn how he wants it folded. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. But to him, he was afraid it would be a big deal and I'd get mad at him. See, he was afraid of my anger. And he had a good reason to be afraid of my anger. Because like I say, I don't get mad, I get even. That kind of thing. But I've learned in the program that there's no wrongs or rights. There's just differences. Just differences, And don't take things so darn personally or seriously all the time. I love Rule 62. I remember the first time I mentioned Rule 62, I was at an Al-Anon conference. They didn't have a clue what I was talking about. It never occurred to me people didn't read and study the AA 12 and 12 because, you see, I'm a Big Book Al-Anon. We have a regular Big Book study in my home group of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous because alcoholism is a family illness. And it's a family illness, then that's the textbook about the family illness too. And so that's what we did. I was driving across the United States, the mainland, in 1992 with my sister. She said to me, I would like to go and see all the places that you've been, and like Mount Rushmore and Green River, Utah, and Flaming Gorge. And she was naming off all these places I've been going to at your conferences for years and years. And I said, well, okay. So I got the car and I called her and I said, put your suitcase, we're leaving. She said, when are we coming back? I said, a month or so, who knows. We'll just go like we want to go. And so this was after our mother had died, and we were talking and zipping out across Wyoming, and she said, I'll never forgive Bobby for what he did. And this is our older brother. And I said, what did Bobby do? And she said, well, he embarrassed me. I had a crush on one of his friends, and he teased me and embarrassed me in front of him, and I'll never forgive him till the day I die. You think it's bothering Bobby much? Bobby's been dead since 1950. Bobby was killed in Korea in 1950, and Dorothy here in 1992 is still pissed off, And I said, that is amazing. I said, now my thing would have been, I would have gotten revenge on Bobby at the time. I wouldn't have worried about it, I'd get over with. But now here she was, the grudge holder. Well, not too long ago that came to my mind about Dorothy saying that she wouldn't forgive Bobby till the day she died. And so I said to her, Dorothy, do you remember something that happened when you were 16 that Bobby did that you had a grudge against him? She said, no, what was it? I said, nothing. And I said, you told me one time you wouldn't forget that till the day you died, and the day you died you forgot it, and I'm not bringing it back. But I just thought that was amazing to me. I try not to respond to arguments, or react to them. J.D. was working out in our yard, and he got into a wasp nest, and he got stung several times. Now, this could kill me because I'm allergic to the insect stings, but I know that they use Benadryl and stuff, so I forget that alcoholics don't do drugs like normal folk. And so I gave him a couple of Benadryl. And then he goes to the meeting and drinks all the coffee. So he came back home. He was mean. He was mean when he came home. And I thought to myself, if I felt like that after going to a meeting, I don't think I'd go to a meeting. That's just terrible. But I'm sitting there in my chair and I'm reading, and he's trying to start an argument. You know how we'll do when we're trying to start an argument? He comes in, sarcastic like that. Okay. And so he went through and into the bedroom, and I thought, good, he's going to go to bed. And I'm still reading. All of a sudden, I have these beads in the doorway from the living room into the bedroom area, and the beads go flip, 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 flip. And he's standing there in his underwear, and he says, and another thing. And he begins to take my inventory. And so he's really going off, and I'm just, okay. Back to my book. Well, he didn't get the reaction that he wanted there, so he swirls back through the beads, and I think, okay, that's it. Well, in about 5 minutes, here go the beads again, flip, and it's, and another thing. And he did this about 4 or 5 times. Well, I'm getting tired of it. And on that last trip that he made, when he swirled through the beads, and I'm gritting my teeth, I noticed on my piano bench there was my pellet gun that I was using that was back during the cat crisis. And I thought, okay. So I went over and I've got my pellet gun and I pumped it up to about 10 and I set it next to me at my chair. And I said, okay, God, here's the deal. If some bitch comes back through that beads with another thing, I'm going to have a pellet up his butt when he leaves. And I've had it. And then God did for him what he couldn't do for himself. He put him to sleep and he didn't have to come back in there. And a lot of times on a situation like that too, I try to use a God bubble. And I'll say, God, protect me in the bubble so that anything he's saying is not going to make me have to react in a bad way. And help me not to say anything back to him that's going to have to make him react in a bad way. Put that bubble around us because, see, God's love is stronger than any anger that we would have. Tradition 11. Each partner best conveys his or her beliefs and philosophy by attraction rather than promotion. Anonymity is a valuable asset to the marriage or relationship. Accepting another person as they are and living one day at a time is applying the gold and silver rules at the same time. It's called living your program, not trying to preach it or teach it, just living it, putting it into action, not talking the talk, just walking the walk. I had a girl that I sponsored one night and she said she was supposed to come over and pick us up to go to the meeting, and she said, I don't know if I should or not because we got a bad weather forecast. And I said, it's okay, God will go with us. And she said, whoopee. And so we went to the meeting, and sure enough, ice and snow and sleet came. And on the way back, we were on the interstate, and all of a sudden you saw all these cars going every which way. And there was a big wreck in progress on the ice, and she did what she was supposed to do, I guess. She panicked and slammed on the brakes. So now we're going in a circle. And I said to her, turn in the direction of your slide. Just like that. And she couldn't hear. Fear is very strong, And I told her again, I said, turn in the direction of your slide. And she couldn't seem to hear. So I got the steering wheel and I turned right before we went off the overpass. Our wheels were up on the curbing going over the overpass. And in a few minutes, like I say, the police came and they're saying, who'd you hit or who hit you? And we're saying, nobody. And he said, well, what are y'all doing here? And I said, we're waiting for the traffic to clear so we can go home. And he just looked at us. Well, we were on the front page of the paper the next morning. We were the only car in a 27-car pileup that was not hit nor hit anyone else. And she turned to me and she said, up there on that overpass, I want your God. I said, what? She said, I want your God. You said you were going to pray and God was going to take care of us. And God is taking care of us. And I want that kind of God. I don't trust. I don't believe. I need that kind of God. And I can remember when I heard my hero in Al-Anon, her name was Ramona Belford, and she was Ramona the Indian from Oklahoma. And she said, I would give you my power. I would give you my God, the Great Spirit. But if I gave you my God, it would deprive you the opportunity and the joy of finding your own. And I can remember thinking, that's okay. I want one that works. I'll take yours. Because we always want that easier, softer way, But we all meet God in our own way. But people look at you as you live your program, not just talking it. And they also notice when you're not. That's like my sister one time. This guy pulled in front of us and almost cut her off, and she went like this to him. And I said, what is that? And she says, well, isn't that what you do? See, she'd seen me do that. And so, people watch us whether we know it or not. So you can be a good thing or a bad thing. It doesn't make any difference. And I found that some of the things that I like to do are like praying with JD. I love to pray with JD. I love to pray with people I sponsor because I know that God is the power. I can't do anything. God has to be the one to do it, Because, we want to help our families. Well, we can't help them because we're too close to them. We have no credibility with those people close to us. They've seen us at our worst. You can be good 10 times and then do one bad thing like you used to, and they'll say, see, they haven't changed. They haven't changed. Because they don't have any objectivity, So we will love your families for you. That's what we're here for. We will love your families. You see, mistakes are the opportunities that I get to learn some wisdom. I can't force a change in somebody else. Some of the things that I like to do, I love that being good and don't get found out. If it gets found out, it doesn't count. I love to do things like that. Like having a positive attitude or smiling. I love to smile at somebody who's not happy. Because I know for one thing, it's probably irritating them to death, But every once in a while, they'll smile back, and that's just really not. Allowing someone to screw up and keep your mouth shut about it. That's another thing I like. Staying out of other people's business. Things that are not my business, stay out of them. And not complaining all the time when things are not the way you'd like them. That's one I really struggle with. Praying for others. Not repeating gossip that you hear. Better yet, if you get real good, you don't even listen to it. I'm working on that one. And living with a light touch. I live with J.D., and I live with a man who's got the light touch down. I'm telling you, he really does. I come home from travel one night, and I was really tired, and I was sitting in my recliner, and he said, you coming to bed? And I said, I'll be there in a minute. I said, I'm just got to veg out right here, just for a little bit. And all of a sudden, off to my left, there's this light. And I look, and there's J.D. standing in his underwear. His arms are outstretched. He's got a kerosene lantern on his head, balancing it on his head. And he said, I'm an angel sent by God to tell you he loves you very much. And so do I. You may call me Monica, I told him, I said, you gotta quit watching that darn TV while I'm gone, But how can you not love a man who's that funny? How can you not love somebody who has that kind of sense of humor? And when my sister crashed and burned, within 10 days I found out that I had a health issue. I had a bad heart. And that I was in one hospital. Dorothy was in another one. And then in a very short period of time, one of the girls, like less than a month, one of the girls I sponsored died of a pulmonary embolism in her 30s. And then I lost both of my dogs that year. They all died. And it seemed like everything that I loved was being taken away. And one night I just went to pieces in my kitchen, and I just went down in front of my kitchen sink. I was in the floor, and I was just squalling my guts out. I said, I can't handle it. I just can't take anymore. I just can't. And J.D. got down in the floor with me, and he sat down on the floor, and he put his arms around me, and he rocked me, and he says, we'll get through it. You and me and God are going to get through this. And I said, J.D., I don't even feel God. He said, you don't have to. He says, God's here whether you feel Him or not. So I was able to get strength from J.D. And see, he had always told me I was a strong one. I wasn't the strong one. J.D. was the one that was a strong one. Tradition 12. Selflessness is a spiritual foundation of our way of life as marriage partners or friends, ever reminding us to place principles above personalities, and the principle is unselfishness. Our greatest gift. I always wondered, do you ever wondered what your purpose in life was? Why am I here? The book tells you to be of maximum use to God and your fellow man. That's your only purpose. Now we got that one out of the way. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But that is our job, is to be of service to one another. You can't be of service to another person and stay selfish. There's no room for pride or selfishness, arrogance, and all that in our new way of life. And we have to learn to place those principles before the personalities. There was a guy that was in JD's AA group, and he was from New York, and he had a horrible accent. Nothing lovely like we have in the South. And Ed would say, when I was up there in Albany, up in the jungle. And I got so sick and tired of the jungle being up in Albany. And finally one night I said to him, Ed, was the program better back in New York? And he said, oh God, yes, it was so much better. I said, why the hell you go back? And he says, that's not very kind, I said, no, it's not. And so then the very next week, what does God do? He gives Ed something to say to me. And Ed said, God never puts on you more than you can stand, but you will. And I needed to hear that, and I got so mad because God let Ed say it. I didn't want to hear it from him. You see, I was discounting the message because of a messenger. And God taught me through Ed, and I was able to make an amends for my smart aleck mouth to Ed, and we became friends, and Ed helped me. Ed was to go back out and drink, and Ed was to die of alcoholism. But Ed helped me. You know, that's the thing. You never know. And that's just like when my mother died, because I had done what you told me to do, I was okay with the deal. And I was okay with Mom. All that stuff was over. It was a done deal when my mom died. Humility means being teachable. You don't know everything. And the book will tell you more will be revealed. You know, you learn more, and that's the reason, you know, after 30 years, I still love the meetings because I still hear things that change the way I think about things and the actions that I take. You know, it keeps your program fresh and alive. And sponsorship, oh my God, what is a better way to be unselfish than to give of your time? You know, it's like I tell people, you know, I've already spent more time on this earth than I have time left to go. And so my time is my greatest gift I can give because it's something I have the least of, you know, because you never know. And to have somebody that you sponsor and to see them getting the miracle of the program working in their lives, that invigorates my life. When I see them getting better, that makes me feel good that God allows me to witness those things and perhaps be some small channel to be a part of that. It enriches my life so much. And the JD, to watch him, how he deals with my sister. You know, we were going home from the nursing home the other day, and JD was crying. And I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "I miss Dorothy the way she was." Because you see, Dorothy was JD's best friend. I lost a sister, but he lost a best friend. And I said, you know, but we have what we have. And she's so sweet. She's just so sweet and so lovable. You know, she can't help the way she is. And his love for her touches my heart. Doing what's best in the relationship, even if it's something I don't want to do. You know, if it's best for the relationship, do it anyway. And concentrating on the blessings that we have instead of the negatives. You know, Chuck Chamberlain talked about looking through a new pair of glasses. You see, I don't know what's good or bad. I know that God makes everything good in the end. And so we don't know till we get there. I try to take God with me and keep in contact, place the principles in my life. It started with the people in my group, then with my friends, and the last place I was able to practice the principles was in my home. Because that's where all the damage had been. You know, it takes a long time. It's easier to do it with people you haven't hurt, you know, but it's well worth the effort. And by the grace of a loving God, JD and I are going to celebrate 38 years of being married this November. You know, that is a miracle. That's a God deal. Because if God were not the center of our relationship, and if we hadn't been able to practice these things in our home, we wouldn't be together today. There would have been no way. I want to tell you, one of the girls I sponsor has a real hard time with gratitude. She never sees God working in her life. And so I told her, I said, I want you to start a little jar of marbles. And every time you see something small that God did for you, put a marble in that. I said, that's a reminder to you that God is working in your life on those days when you don't see it. And I call it our rainbow jar. We have urns of marbles at our house of where the God's been working. And every time when you think, God, where is God? God's not working. Look at what God's done. God's still there and He's still doing the deal. And it's like the little story, the sky is blue. Did you know that the sky is blue? It's always blue. And at home, you know, they'll say, well, no, you know, there's clouds. It turns black. No, if you fly high enough in an airplane, you will see the sky is always blue. Things may get between you and the blue, but it is always blue, whether you can see it or not. And to me, that's like God. God is always there, whether you can see it or not. God is always there. Practice of this last tradition is when I think of myself less and I think more about you. And I want to thank you for coming today and listening to me share. Thank you.